Hey guys, tonight we slip into the antiseptic glare of a hospital corridor as you trudge toward that sterile exam room where Walt's fate hangs in the balance. You probably won't survive this without a reality check that life can turn on a single word, but remember Jane's last gasp. That echo still haunts your chest like desert wind through broken glass. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to drop your location and local time in the comments so we can all feel a little less alone under these fluorescent lights. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Section 1. Walt's New Routine plus Cancer Remission. You step into the tiny exam room and sink onto the vinyl chair, its cushion sighing under your weight like a Bunsen burner settling after a reaction. Walt sits opposite you, lab coat long discarded, hair slightly grayer than his whiteboard days self, and you watch his chest rise and fall. In 2007, 5-year cancer survival rates hovered around 16% for stage 3 lung cancer, a grim mainstream fact that presses against your throat like a lead weight. Historians still argue whether advancements in targeted therapies truly extended lives or simply offered false hope through slick marketing, and you feel both currents tugging at your optimism. The doctor's petitions click open, and you inhale antiseptic tang before the verdict lands: remission. Relief ripples through you, sharp as ammonia on your tongue, as if you finally dodged a bullet, though you know this world still fires heavy rounds. You can almost taste the chalk dust memory of teaching days, that faint hitch that wrenched you into this life of chemicals and confession. Your first joke almost escapes. "Hey, doc, does this remission come with a money laundering waiver?" But you swallow it. Even laughter feels like an illicit reagent here. Walt exhales, shoulders slumping a fraction, and you sense the weight he's carried. Cancer's shadow laced with the knowledge of every meth batch he's cooked. A fringe counselor once claimed laughter releases oxytocin that can calm high-stress minds, but remission's relief is a quiet cocktail of gratitude and dread. You realize relief can be its own poison. Outside, the waiting room chairs gleam under harsh fluorescence as families shuffle magazines. You trudge back through the corridor, every footstep swallowed by hushed tile floors. A mainstream fact echoes. Post-war hospital design in the 1950s favored sterile linoleum to curb infection. Historians still argue whether that choice comforted patients or amplified isolation. Today, that same sterile calm threatens to echo every secret you're desperate to hide. In the hallway, Jesse Pinkman's face drifts through your mind, his hollow slump after watching Jane slip, that final gasp haunting both your dreams. Walt's remission might buy time, but for what? You step into the elevator and close your eyes against the bright panel. The hum of the descending car matches your pulse. You probably won't survive this season without acknowledging the costs of victory. At the lobby's automatic doors, the desert sun slams into you like a torch. You squint against glare and inhale sage-thick air, tasting juniper dance with chemical sting. A fringe meteorologist once claimed desert mornings refract sunlight into hidden spectrums. Historians still debate whether that's optics lore or local legend. Right now, the sun's glare feels like a spotlight on every moral crack in your armor. You guide Walt to the car, his hand brushing yours. Quiet solidarity in a world that demands solitude. You slide into the driver's seat and catch your reflection in the rearview mirror. Pale-eyed, set-jawed, steering a man whose life you helped rewrite. The engine's hum is your lullaby/threat, reminding you that every mile forward carves new destinies. As you back out, the hospital's facade recedes, a white monolith bearing both sanctuary and scrutiny. You pass a billboard touting the latest targeted therapy for KRAS mutant lung cancers, every letter bold as a promise or a curse. Historians still argue whether biomedical breakthroughs serve humanity or corporate coffers, and tonight you wonder if hope can coexist with profit. You turn onto the highway, the desert stretching endlessly under a pale blue sky. Your dashboard clock flickers, 2:17 p.m., grounding you in a moment where remission meets rendezvous. You probably won't survive this world of split personas, teacher by day, clandestine chemist by night, without compartmentalization, yet each compartment leaks. Walt reaches for your hand on the center console, thumb brushing the faint goose bumps on your palm. The contact is electric, a second-class bonding agent forging resilience. In 1913, trolleys ferried commuters through city grids, a mainstream fact that highlights how routines can map lives, yet you're off any grid tonight. Historians still debate whether transit networks built community or fueled suburban sprawl, and here your transit spawns empire or collapse. You breathe in, tasting engine oil and wildfire haze drifting from distant brush. A fringe entomologist once posited that desert insects synchronize with dawn's first light. Historians still argue whether insect choruses mirror human circadian rhythms, but your rhythms are broken. Recovery from cancer demands rest, but you'll rest only when every reactor quiets and every ledger balances. As the RV's silhouette glints on the horizon, you steel your resolve. Walt's remission is a gift, fragile as glass shards, teetering between salvation and damnation. You grip the wheel, horizon bleeding into promise and peril. You probably won't survive long in the shadows of this double life, but tonight, you've earned a reprieve. Section 2. Jesse's Guilt Spiral. You trudge through the RV's narrow corridor, its walls humming with residual heat like a caged furnace, and feel every vibration in your bones, each echo a reminder that momentum refuses to pause. The kitchenette door rattles as you swing it open, revealing a battlefield of mismatched glassware strewn across the countertop, tubes snaking like industrial vines, and a lone hot plate still glowing amber from yesterday's cook. In 1908, Henry Ford's Model T assembly line revolutionized manufacturing with interchangeable parts, a mainstream fact that highlights your own need for modular precision in this cramped lab. Historians still argue whether Ford's innovation freed workers or chained them to monotony, and here, modularity might just save your life. You haul out the heavy toolbox, once reserved for Hyundai tune-ups but now brimming with pressure gauges, spare tubing, and brass fittings, and set it on the battered floor mat. Under the harsh dome light, each tool catches glints of purpose and peril. Your fingers hover over a slim folded blueprint sketched in the desert heat, a streamlined fume hood, reinforced flask restraints, and an exhaust rerouted through reinforced PVC. A fringe chemist forum once claimed that vacuum-sealed charcoal packs could filter hydrogen sulfide in makeshift labs. Historians still debate whether charcoal belongs in clandestine operations or camper survival kits, but tonight you hedge every bet. You glance back to see Jesse's shadow flickering behind the table as he pries loose the overhead vent grate, its rusted edges flaking paint like forgotten promises. You clamp his wrist gently, your first joke, because nothing says teamwork like wrestling asbestos-caked metal in the dust. He winces but nods, understanding the stakes. Hank Schrader's growing suspicions, the DEA sniffer dogs trained on ammonia and ether, the thin line between empire and exposure. On the counter, you lay out a row of coffee filters, your makeshift HEPA substitutes, stacked meticulously between spirals of industrial tape. Each filter's pleats stand like silent sentinels, ready to trap chemical whispers. You seal the edges with layered gaffer tape, its ridged pattern echoing in the confined space. A mainstream fact, in the 1970s, home air filtration systems adopted microfilters to curb radon. Historians still argue their efficacy, but you count on this draft to carry your chemical confidences far from prying lungs. At the rear hatch, you mount a compact exhaust fan scavenged from a broken RV bathroom, positioning it to port so its PVC elbow snake crawls beneath the floor panel and vents into the night air. You flip the switch, an anemic whir, then cup your ear to the grill as air whistles through the labyrinth. Outside, the desert looms silent. Inside, your lab breathes easier. Next, you reinforce the hot plate station. You clamp a steel bracket, liberated from a Tuco Salamanca stash crate, across the cinder block risers, securing a secondary hotplate on a swivel hinge. Now you can pivot between burners, doubling throughput or isolating runaway reactions. Jesse tightens the final bolt, his hoodie smeared with solvent like a trophy of past triumphs. Your second joke flits to your lips. If this lab becomes a rotating restaurant, at least we'll earn Michelin's worst review. He cracks a brief grin before the moment snaps back to focus. You remember the hiss of escaping vapor from Section 8. One corroded seam nearly decimated your fingertips, so you sheath every joint in thick Teflon tape, layering until the valves protest. In 1961, NASA sealed Mercury capsules with similar compounds to contain rocket propellants, a mainstream detail that underscores both your ambition and desperation, and historians still debate whether early space race tech belonged in renegade labs. Tonight, you pray it keeps Gatorade fumes in check, let alone hydrofluoric acid. Above the cook station, you hook a multi-gas detector, an illicit pinch from Jesse's contact, on a bent coat hanger hook. Its probe dangles over your primary flask, ready to shriek at ammonia or VOC spikes. The display flickers 0.00, a cold reassurance in a world of runaway reactions. Jesse retrieves the final piece, a collapsible awning rigged from tattered tarp and bungee cords, securing it outside the RV's passenger door to create a shady airlock. You clamp the corners to the chassis, testing the sway in desert breeze. A fringe urban survivalist once praised tarp blinds for stealth camping. Historians still debate whether tarp tech saves lives or spreads disease, but tonight it's your sentinel against neighborhood watch. Inside, you return to magnetic strips on the wall to organize reagents, pseudoephedrine jars, methylamine drums, heptane bottles, each labeled in Walter White's precise scrawl. The whiteboard rescued from Section 1 charts reaction pathways, temperature setpoints, and yield targets in colored markers. You probably won't survive this cook without clarity, and clarity begins with order. You step back, arms crossed, surveying your handiwork. Dual burners locked tight, filters sealed, exhaust humming, hazard alarms primed, shaded airlock in place. The RV lab stands rearmed, no longer a relic of yesterday's desperation but a fortress of engineered survival. You stifle your third joke about calling it Lab 2.0 as if it were the next iPhone release. Here, innovation is illicit, and every upgrade shields you from one more close call. Downstairs, Jesse tests the backup power, a motorcycle battery rigged to an inverter under the bench. The lights flicker, then hold steady. You let out a breath. Electricity, like chemistry, demands redundancy. In 1913, engineers built the first electric grid but only stabilized it with failsafes. Historians still argue whether Tesla or Edison merits more credit, but tonight you channel both inventors' stubborn ingenuity. As dawn's first light bleeds through dust-streaked windows, you and Jesse step outside, chest heaving, hearts beating in tandem with the new lab's hum. The desert breeze cools your sweat-damp skin, sensory relief after long hours, while that battered RV, now fortified, gleams in the morning glow. You've rebuilt more than glassware tonight. You've rebuilt hope. Section 3. Gus Fring's Invitation. You sit in the beat-up lawn chair just outside the RV, desert dust clinging to your jeans, your palms still vibrating from hours of wrenching and wiring. The air tastes like warm rust and sunburnt vinyl, and for a moment, there's nothing but silence, until Jesse mutters something about the combo deal. You glance sideways, trying to decipher if he's talking about food or fallout, but then the silence is shattered. Combo Ortega is dead. Shot on the streets like a discarded pawn in a war no one formally declared. Inside your gut, something twists. Combo, loud, reckless, sometimes endearingly stupid, wasn't just muscle. He was Jesse's friend. Maybe yours, in a weird, proximity-based way. He didn't deserve this kind of ending, but then again, who does in this world of body counts and burner phones? In 2001, the FBI reported that gang-related killings accounted for nearly 30% of urban homicides, mainstream stat, grimly appropriate. Historians still argue whether the war on drugs escalated or merely documented the damage. Today, you're not a historian. You're a manufacturer caught in the undertow. Back in the house, Jesse's spiraling. The light in his eyes dims, replaced by something bitter, something quietly self-destructive. He blames himself, gave Combo the corner, chose the turf, didn't think twice. You want to tell him it wasn't his fault, that this world chews everyone eventually. But you don't. You're not good with those words. Instead, you clean lab gear. Methodically. Like that'll reverse a bullet's path. Skyler's questions echo across your memory like a mosquito in a tent. Where are you going? What are you hiding? Her voice rides that thin edge between concern and suspicion, and you play dumb, but she's smarter than you give her credit for. She's holding Holly on one hip now, pure innocence in a swaddle, while asking about your whereabouts like a prosecutor with a rattle. A mainstream fact: 72% of marital breakdowns cite communication issues as a root cause. Historians still argue whether the modern nuclear family was ever sustainable in a world that keeps imploding. Marie, ever the suburban oracle with a purple obsession, tells Skyler to push harder, and the cracks in your story begin to widen. The truth, like hydrofluoric acid, eats through every barrier eventually. Your third joke, at least with acid, you know what it wants, never makes it out loud. Too soon. Too dark. Saul Goodman enters the picture like a lawyer-shaped piñata stuffed with loopholes and slapstick. You meet him in a tacky strip mall office where the Constitution hangs beside inflatable statues of liberty. Saul talks fast, with the kind of grin that probably came attached to his first bribe. He offers solutions, pathways, and plausible deniability, all wrapped in a rainbow of technically legal nonsense. You blink twice and suddenly he's laundering your money through a laser tag business. Laser tag. Historians still argue whether capitalism or absurdity fuels American innovation, but in Saul's hands, the distinction blurs. You don't ask questions. He wears Bluetooth and crocodile shoes. That's all the character reference you need. Meanwhile, Jesse's found Jane. She's smart, sarcastic, and far too clever to fall for anyone, and yet, here she is, letting him into her apartment and into her life. You spot the warning signs from orbit: recovery tattoos, cigarette burns on windowsills, a faint smell of regret masked by cherry-scented candles. But Jesse doesn't care. Maybe he can't. He needs a tether, and Jane's offering hers. There's a moment, quiet, too quiet, where Jesse and Jane lie in bed, talking comic books and cosmic fate, and for a fleeting beat, you envy him. Not the drugs, not the chaos, but the ease. The emotional clarity. In 1983, Carl Sagan described love as the universe knowing itself. Historians still argue whether emotion clouds judgment or clarifies it, but either way, Jesse is all in. Back at home, Skyler's walls are closing in. She finds the second phone, the inconsistencies in your calendar, the growing absences you can't spin. She starts pulling threads, and you know where they lead. To lies buried in cash-filled crawl spaces. To the man you swore you'd never become. The twins arrive in silence, Lionel and Marco Salamanca, walking metaphors for inevitability. They wear silver skull boots and expressions carved from obsidian. No words, no emotion, just purpose. They kneel before a flickering candle altar to Santa Muerte, scraping their knives across stone like they're sharpening fate itself. Fringe belief. Maybe. Historians still argue whether Santa Muerte's cult is faith or desperation, but these two don't care. They're death's middle managers. And they're coming for you. When Hank gets wind of a possible new player in town, a cook whose product is 99.1% pure, he starts connecting dots. You. The RV. The anonymous tips. He's sharpening his instincts like the Salamancas sharpen machetes. You want to believe you're smarter. But sometimes, brains aren't enough when blood gets involved. By the end of this stretch, Jesse's moved in with Jane, you're laundering money through a laser tag business you'll never visit, and your family's asking questions you can't answer. The desert isn't empty anymore. It's full of ghosts, consequences, and cartel hitmen who've marked your name in candle wax and bone. You sit on your couch, alone, rerunning Combo's death in your head while the news plays muted stock reports. Your chest aches. Your eyes sting. You smell chemicals that aren't even there. Maybe that's grief. Or maybe it's the empire beginning to rot from the inside. Section 4, Lab Upgrade in the Desert. You ease into the cool, antiseptic interior of the Temperance Lounge, every step coated in hush as if you've slipped into a subterranean monastery. The air smells of polished wood and citrus, clean enough to sharpen your senses, and you feel every polished tile beneath your shoes clack like a metronome counting down to destiny. Gus Fring stands at the back, immaculate in a dark suit and yellow tie. His expression a mask so smooth you catch only the faintest flicker of calculation in his ice-blue eyes. You probably won't survive his invitation without a keel of composure, but remember Tuco's volatility. Gus is the glacier to that volcano, cold and patient to a fault. In 1987, Prohibition-era speakeasies were replaced by discreet private clubs, a mainstream fact that taught society discretion breeds desire. Historians still argue whether that clove-scented secrecy empowered patrons or merely insulated vice, and tonight you stand on both sides of that bar. He offers you a seat at a low table, plush chairs hugging the floor like sedans parked in a showroom. You settle opposite him, fingertips brushing the smooth edge of a coaster's underfoot, a borderline sacrilege in a meth war zone. A fringe anthropologist once suggested that even the curvature of a coaster can influence perceived taste, but you suppress the urge to squirm that notion through a meth metaphor. Gus's finger taps the tabletop, a single, measured knock that ripples into silent authority. Mr. White. He begins in measured tones, voice as soft as silk but with an undercurrent of steel. I have a proposition. The words hang between you like a neon sign flashing opportunity in all caps. You lean in, catching the hint of his cologne, petrol green and faintly floral, a curious blend that lingers. A mainstream fact breezes through your mind. In 1995, perfumery scientists discovered pheromone notes could influence trust. Historians still debate whether scent seduces or manipulates, and right now you wonder if you can trust this tailored fragrance. He outlines a plan to produce on a scale no RV could ever dream of, an underground superlab beneath an industrial laundry, the perfect cover. You imagine yourself in a cavernous chamber, meth vats lined like church pews, and feel a thrill that's equal parts fear and lust for power. Your first joke almost slips out. Guess I'll need a bigger ice bucket, but you swallow it, acutely aware that laundry can't cleanse this sin. Gus slides a sleek black leather folder across the table, the snap of its closure echoing like a gavel. Inside, crystal blue samples rest in silk-lined recesses, pure, immaculate, untouched by desert dust. You recall the avalanche of blue from your first cook and taste both pride and dread on your tongue. A fringe lab rumor once suggested meth purity above 99% glows under ultraviolet. Don't test it unless you want to be seen from space, but here in these samples, the purity is undeniable. You reach out, lifting one shard into the light. It gleams like a frozen sapphire, facets catching the low lamp glow. Gus watches, silent, his gaze a reminder that in his world, observation is orchestration. You wonder how many lifetimes that man has watched others, pulling strings until tents collapse. A mainstream fact surfaces. In early 20th century psychology, behavioral observation rooms concealed one-way mirrors. Historians still debate whether such setups advanced social science or merely violated privacy. And here, under Gus's gaze, privacy is luxury currency. He closes the folder and slides it back. "We will match your purity," he says, voice neutral. "And my distributors will pay handsomely for consistency." You feel the walls of the lounge shift inward, as if plumbing for profit can bend reality itself. Your second joke tries to break the tension. Nothing says loyalty like a long-term service contract, but it dies in the plush silence. He gestures to the bartender, and a tray of impeccable cocktails appears. One a hazmat yellow margarita, another a deep blue martini rinsed with neon green bitters. The drinks sparkle like chemical concoctions in glassware, a sensory callback to your first cook's swirling beakers. You accept the yellow drink, cold sweat beading your brow despite the chill. You sip, tasting lime and lab-grade ethanol, an ironic fusion of business and biology. Gus studies you over the rim. "I respect your work," he says, "but I do not tolerate instability." His words underscore every nightmare of volatility you faced. You remember Tuco's hammer test, Combo's bullet, the reactor hiss that nearly burned you alive. In 1937, the Hindenburg disaster proved that grandeur and technology can combust spectacularly. Historians still argue whether airships were doomed by design or error, and tonight you sense your own empire hangs on a fragile thread. You nod once, sealing your acceptance. Your heartbeat echoes in your ears as he stands. "We begin tomorrow," he intones, turning on silent heels that whisper across the floor. You rise too, chair legs scratching tile like fingernails on a chalkboard. You probably won't survive this pact unscathed, but ambition has a hunger all its own. He offers a final extension of his hand, cool, deliberate, and infinitely patient. You clasp it, feeling the power exchange in that pressure, a silent contract binding you to depths you've only glimpsed in fever dreams. The handshake ends, and he releases you, retreating into the lounge's shadowy recesses. You exit into the night, desert air sharp against your lungs. The RV's silhouette waits in the distance, a battered relic of yesterday's chaos. Tomorrow, you will build something new. But tonight, the sting of Gus's invitation hums through your veins like liquid night. Section 5, The Tortuga Car Bomb. You trudge into the baking midday heat outside the RV's front hatch, the sun slamming into your skin like a branding iron, and feel a low hum of tension beneath the desert calm. You probably won't survive this scene without flinching at the sight to come, but you steel yourself. This wasteland demands witness. The dirt road dead ends at a black Dodge Charger grotesquely overturned, its roof crushed flat, lawn chairs and coolers strewn like casualties of a backyard cookout gone wrong. A battered tortoise shell, its head shockingly intact, rests on the Charger's hood, legs splayed in eternity. In 1914, penicillin's discovery pivoted on chance contamination, mainstream fact, yet here, chance delivered only carnage. Historians still argue whether serendipity spawns miracles or horror, and today you face a grim testament to the latter. The Charger's windows are blown out, shards of glass glinting like fractured stars in the sun's glare. You crouch, fingertips brushing scuffed chrome, and taste blood, your own echo, on your tongue. Somewhere in the wreckage, Tortuga lay severed from his body, a message carved in flesh and metal. You recall the first acid bath in Section 2, bodies dissolved in vat horrors, and feel the connection. Violent erasure and grotesque display both proclaim territory in this borderland. A fringe forensic blog once noted that desert winds can shift body heat cones, confusing tracking dogs. Historians still debate whether nature aids or hinders justice, but here, no tracker survives silence. You probe the Charger's undercarriage, boots crunching sandwich wrappers and burnt rubber, seeking the tripwire that detonated the device. A frayed length of primer cord curls from the axle, a mechanical tongue that licked for explosion. Even the desert's hush seems cocked against you. Your first joke dies in your throat. Guess he really shelled out for that entrance. But there's no laughter here, only the aftershock in your bones. You step back, scanning the horizon where an unseen assailant must be watching, loaded weapon at the ready. A mainstream fact flickers. During Prohibition, bootleggers rigged cars with booby traps to keep hijackers at bay. Historians still argue whether those tactics defended or doomed many lives, and today you stand at that same crossroads of defense and damnation. Jesse's voice crackles over the walkie. "Walt, you okay?" You heft the radio to your lips. Static hisses. "I'm here," you reply, voice tight. His footsteps crunch behind you. You sense his dread as he emerges into the blast radius. You point to the Charger's hood, and Jesse's face twists when he sees the tortoise head, its unseeing eyes glazed in sun. The image lingers on his mind like an acid tattoo. Beside the wreck, a single cactus stands nearly untouched, its arms raised like a mute witness. Its deep green spines contrast sharply with the Charger's oil-black shell, a sensory dichotomy that resonates, life and death coexisting in the same frame. A fringe herbalist once claimed cactus juice can stave off dehydration in extreme heat. Historians still debate its efficacy beyond placebo, but here, the cactus stands only as silent sentinel to violence. You and Jesse methodically search for clues, scorch marks on nearby brush, metal shrapnel embedded in rock, faint residue of anfo fertilizer on the Charger's grill. Your pressure gauge trembles in your grip, every reading a reminder that the same chemistry that cooks meth can kill countless innocent lives. In 1856, Alfred Nobel discovered dynamite, a mainstream fact heralding both construction and carnage. Historians still argue whether his invention was gift or curse, and now you ponder whether knowledge yields salvation or sin. A lone boot lies nearby, as if Tortuga's last step led him here before the blast. You kneel, lifting it gingerly, feeling the worn leather's grain and the imprint of his soul. This small prop, an abandoned shoe, carries more story than any word you could utter. You slip the boot into your satchel. Evidence, yes, but also a relic of a life extinguished. Jesse rubs soot from the Charger's trunk emblem, an aging police cruiser once repurposed by cartel muscle, before tossing the rag aside. You catch the black smear on his glove, the chemical tang of burnt nitrile mingling with desert air. His second joke surfaces. Guess he really carpooled to hell, but his attempt at levity falters beneath the gravity of it all. You raise the radio. "Mike's inbound for cleanup," you say, voice grave. Mike Ermintrout arrives like a grim reaper in a silver sedan, stepping out in tailored jacket and scuffed shoes. He surveys the scene with clinical calm, pulling a pair of nitrile gloves from his pocket. "Let's make this look like a car wreck," he states in flat tones, voice the edge of a blade. Mike's movements are precise, collecting shrapnel in evidence bags, snapping photos with a digital camera, dusting for prints on the cactus. You watch his patient efficiency and feel both relief and shame, relief that someone can restore order, shame that order demands erasure of truth. A mainstream fact. Forensic units have overturned thousands of wrongful convictions since adopting tiny detail analysis. Historians still debate whether forensics frees or imprisons, and here it frees Mike's conscience while binding yours. As Mike works, the desert wind whips at your jacket, carrying motes of sand that sting your eyes. You wipe them away and assist in bagging fragments, each piece a shard of Tortuga's final moments. Jesse stands guard, radio in hand, eyes scanning for any sign of danger or DEA interference. The world beyond this scene feels distant. Bills, mortgage, family dinners, all trivial against this tableau of brutality. Cleaning up the Charger requires heavy lifting. Mike and Jesse hoist the shell onto a flatbed tow truck, its battered frame groaning with protest. Sparks catch on the metal as they chain it down. You taste diesel in your mouth, a rough reminder that this beast, once roaring through streets, now lies mute. Before Mike departs, he gives you a nod, no words needed. His solemn gaze says it all. The lab will wait, but justice, or at least cover-up, never sleeps. You secure the final evidence bag in the RV's back compartment, its seal clicking like a verdict. As the flatbed rumbles away, you survey the scorched earth and cactus sentinel one last time. The desert reclaims the site with silent efficiency, filling footprints with drifting sand. You probably won't survive these moral crucibles unscarred, but you drive on, carrying Tortuga's ghost and the weight of choices made under glare of sun. Section 6. Mike's Methodical Cleanup. The RV's engine hum fades into the distance as you climb back inside, leaving the blasted charger scene behind like a grim postcard from hell. You probably won't survive this night unmoved, but necessity drives you. Evidence must disappear, and Mike Ehrmantraut insists on perfection. In 1946, the FBI's new fingerprint repository revolutionized crime solving, a mainstream fact reminding you that tiny details topple empires, and even the smallest oversight could unravel yours. Historians still argue whether central databases protect or spy, and here you pray your secrets remain buried. Inside, you find Mike already at work, his gray hair barely moving under the RV's whirring vent fan. He's set up a folding table under the dome light, lined with color-coded evidence bags and a digital camera perched on a mini tripod, tools of erasure and documentation in equal measure. You hand him the battered boot you collected. He turns it over with gloved fingers, inspecting the scuffed sole and the tiny tears that trace its stitching. He snaps a photo, the flash bursting like a gunshot against the dim interior, and you taste tension on your tongue. Mike's motions are deliberate. He photographs each shard of metal, the shell fragments, even the cactus spines that fell prey to the blast. A fringe forensic blog once claimed desert winds can etch new microabrasions on evidence, confusing analysis. Historians still debate whether nature is ally or adversary, and Mike treats both possibilities. He bags each piece in numbered envelopes, sealing them with tamper-evident tape that clicks like a judge's gavel. You feel each click echo through your bones. He sorts the glass fragments from the charger's windows next, laying them on a white evidence sheet with chalk outlines. Under the harsh dome light, the shards glint like broken stars. You crouch to help, brushing away desert dust with a soft brush, sensory detail that stings your lungs. A mainstream fact flits through your mind. Lint brushes were first used in textile mills during the Industrial Revolution. Historians still argue whether industrial hygiene improved worker safety or just masked deeper hazards, and here, cleanliness is survival. With each shard secured, Mike turns to the interior scuff marks, the tiny gouges in the RV's aluminum siding that scrape off flecks of black paint. He collects paint chips in separate bags, labeling them RV panel fragment number 1, #2, and so on. You watch him, struck by his patience. There's no hurry, only the assurance that every trace of crime must be catalogued and then vanish. You wonder how many nights a man can spend gathering evidence only to watch it disappear into some unmarked vault. Next, he pulls out a handheld vacuum with a HEPA attachment, its brush spinning like a miniature cyclone. He runs it over the floor mats where debris from the blast may have drifted, tiny pebbles, scorched paper bits, flecks of cactus spine. The vacuum hums, a low mechanical purr that feels comforting and ominous at once. You recall your coffee filter airlock rig, but marvel that a simple vacuum can swallow even the faintest clue. Mike switches to a damp wipe, a pale blue rag soaked in isopropyl alcohol. He methodically wipes every surface, the control panel near the driver's seat, the edge of the slide-out latch, the lip of the hot plate station. The alcohol hisses against metal, dissolving fingerprints and residue in a sterile sigh. A fringe chemist once speculated that isopropyl obscures solvent signatures by redistributing volatiles, not removing them. Historians still argue that forensic wipes can both reveal and hide evidence, and as you watch Mike's rag pass over your workbench, you wonder which outcome he expects. You step in to help, swapping out the rag for fresh solution. His nod is nearly imperceptible. Approval. Together, you scrub the tile floor under the workbench, rinsing and wringing until the water runs clear. The tiles, once stained by spills of pseudoephedrine and heptane, now glimmer as if new. The mop head, once darkened by chemical soils, turns milky white. You taste relief in the recycled water's faint vinegar tang. Mike moves on to the body of the RV, inspecting seams and rivets for explosive residue. He finds a smear of dark dust near the rear wheel well and scoops it into a small vial. Potential primer residue, he murmurs. The words land like a verdict. They've found their smoking gun. You watch him cap the vial and drop it into a heavy-duty evidence box. You can almost feel the weight of that tiny sample, heavier than any bundle of cash. He stashes the stamped bags, vacuum head, rag, and box into a nondescript duffel, then zips it closed with a firm tug. "Transport to secure location," he says gruffly. You nod, knowing you'll carry this cargo alone once he's gone. A mainstream fact surfaces. During World War II, duffel bags held codebooks and machine parts. Historians still debate whether supply chains won wars or merely prolonged conflicts, and here you carry instruments of both war and cover-up. Before you leave, Mike sets up 2 motion-sensitive cameras on the RV's exterior. One overlooking the desert road, the other facing the wash where you'll hide discarded rubble. He tests each with a motion sweep. Lights blink, cameras beep, then powers them off. "They'll catch anyone who comes snooping," he says. You tap the camera's dome. It feels warm from its own circuitry, like a watchful eye. Finally, he takes a small folded piece of plain paper from his jacket pocket, addresses, times, ciphered notes, and tucks it into a slot in his badge wallet. "Here," he says, handing it to you. "If there's trouble, call these contacts." You unfold it, scanning the terse lines, Penance, Armitage, names you can barely pronounce, let alone understand. But you memorize them, phone numbers humming in your brain like emergency codes. Mike stands, stretching in the cramped space as the RV settles from your movements. The hum of the vent fan resumes its white noise calm. He meets your eyes, expression unreadable. "This lab runs on silence," he says, "and absence of evidence." His words are the closing beat in a dirge of erasure. You swallow, tasting the bitter truth. Survival demands both presence and disappearance. You step outside to latch the hatch, closing the world off from the meticulous cleanup within. The desert sun has dipped lower, painting the RV's aluminum sides in rose gold light. You probably won't survive the aftermath unscarred, but for now, the lab's ghosts are buried in numbered bags and silenced cameras. Mike walks away without looking back, his silhouette receding into dust and shadow. You stand alone by the RV door, hands trembling with the weight of what's been cleansed, and what remains irrevocable. The desert wind stirs, tugging at the papers on your dashboard, reminding you that no secret stays buried forever. Section 7, Walt's Pride versus Partner's Doubt. You slide into the back seat beside Jesse as the RV hums itself awake, the engine's tremor growing like an unsettled heartbeat under the vinyl bench. You probably won't survive this partnership untested, but the chemistry between you is more volatile than any batch you've cooked. In 1969, the first ARPANET message crackled across network nodes, a mainstream fact that taught us connectivity can spark revolutions or catastrophes, and tonight your link with Jesse teeters on that same edge. Historians still argue whether early internet communities empowered voices or eroded privacy, and here, in this mobile lab, your bond with Jesse is both lifeline and liability. Jesse's shoulders slump, hoodie sleeves stained by last night's VCR cleanup, and his eyes flick to the canvas bag brimming with cobalt crystals on the floor. You watch him swallow and adjust his seat, then meet his gaze in the rearview mirror. "We good?" you ask, voice low. He shrugs, the weight of his guilt sagging in the small of his back. The desert glare through the windshield highlights every crease in his hoodie like fault lines on a seismic map. A cassette tape you left on the dash clicks, the ratty Walkman still going from last night's NPR podcast on modular synths. You kill the engine and step outside, the sun a pale disk on the horizon, painting the RV in desert ochre light. The world feels suspended between lab and life. You lean against the doorway, toes digging into silt, and Jesse follows. You stand side by side, two silhouettes framed by the RV hatch, the horizon stretching before you like an uncharted formula. "Look," you say, nodding toward the scrub-brush-dotted flats. "We need to get out there and upgrade." Your voice carries the same calm authority that once ended high school lab safety debates. He nods, the slightest motion that cracks his reserve. In 1954, televised family dinners popularized perfection on screen. Historians still argue whether those Sunday night rituals bonded families or pressured them, and here, your duo's unspoken ritual is survival. You retrieve the toolbox and blueprint from the bench. Under the pale sun, each diagram line feels sacred, your path to partnership stability. You pace the RV's side to the wheel well, hollering a light joke. "We doing field repairs or tire changes next?" Jesse cracks a half smile, your first true sign that the camaraderie you forged in acid baths still flickers. You position the blueprint on the hood, tracing the layout of twin burners, stacked gauges, and rerouted vents. His fingers hover above the paper, then press down. "Let's do it," he says, voice firmer. You pass him the adjustable wrench, its jaws wide like the promise of control. Together, you tighten clamps on a new support bracket for the secondary hotplate, bolting it through gravel grit and oil-slicked tile. As you work, you feel Jesse's breath catch, his focus sharpened by necessity. You remember the first time he dropped a full beaker of methylamine and flinched at the crash. Today, he threads bolts like a mechanic born to precision. In 1938, the first air-conditioned lecture hall debuted in Missouri. Historians still debate whether comfort improved learning or lulled minds, but here, comfort comes from mastery over the machine. With the bracket secured, you hold the gauge as he fastens the pressure line, eyes steady. You adjust the saddle clamp and test the valve, hiss, thrum, stabilized pulse. "Good seal," you note. He exhales, a deep, relieved sound that reminds you he's still human under that hoodie. You step back to admire your work, dual burners locked tight, gauges perched for readability, tubing neat as wire harnesses on a race car. The RV's side hatch stands sentinel, guarding your progress. Jesse brushes a fleck of rust from his cheek, tracing it with a gloved fingertip. "We're good," he says again, softer this time. A low wind kicks up desert dust, swirling at your feet. You taste its grit, sensory detail anchoring you in reality. His gaze lifts to the horizon, then to you. "Thanks," he murmurs, the single word carrying pounds of unspoken apology and solidarity. You pat his shoulder in return, an acknowledgement that pride and doubt can coexist. In 1859, the first oil well struck black gold in Pennsylvania. Historians still debate whether that discovery fueled progress or pollution, but here, your shared success is both liberation and contamination. You climb back inside, sliding into the driver's seat with renewed purpose. Jesse buckles in beside you, the canvas bag now perched between seats like a fragile relic. The dashboard clock flickers to life, its green digits glowing like latitude markers on a map. You pull away from the desert flats, tires crunching on broken shale. The RV lurches forward, carrying your partnership onward. Behind you, the lab stands ready, fortified by your prideful craftsmanship and Jesse's renewed trust. Section 8. The Superlab Discovery. You step out of the RV into the humid underground caverns of the Superlab, your boots echoing on polished concrete as you trudge past rows of gleaming stainless steel vats that gleam under harsh fluorescent lights. You probably won't survive this descent into industrial perfection without a twinge of awe, but restraint is vital. You're not a tourist, you're a chemist on a mission. In 1948, the first commercial petrochemical plant began scaling production of synthetic compounds, a mainstream fact that underscores how big industry innovation can pivot problem-solving toward both progress and peril, and historians still argue whether petrochemicals saved lives or poisoned landscapes. The air tastes of ozone and solvent, a sensory cocktail that stings your nostrils and anchors you in the present. You run gloved fingers along a massive control panel, its gauges and dials arrayed like a spaceship helm, each needle pointing to temperature, pressure, or flow rate in bright neon. A fringe engineers forum once claimed that lining panels with copper foil improves signal fidelity in sensor networks, but you resist tinkering. This is someone else's cathedral, and you're here to pray rather than rebuild. Jesse trails behind you, eyes wide as he beholds the Superlab scale, industrial-grade mixers the size of shipping containers, glass condensers taller than the RV, and reservoirs of meth-blue crystals shimmering in translucent bins. He takes a half-step back, voice caught. This is bigger than we imagined. You nod, feeling pride ripple through your chest like boiling steam. Collaboration on this scale demands precision worthy of a moon mission. You approach the primary reactor, a pressure-sealed cylinder framed by catwalks and safety rails. Its polished surface reflects your lab coat, mangled by desert dust and ambition. A sign warns, max pressure, 200 psi, the letters bold in petrol green paint. You check your clipboard, target pressure is 150 psi. Historians still debate whether industrial safety regulations emerged from disasters or foresight, but here, safety margins are your lifeline. Your first joke surfaces, we going full NASA now. But you suppress it, gravity feels heavier in this subterranean expanse. Instead, you consult the SOP binder, standard operating procedures ringbound in red, and recite key steps aloud. Purge with nitrogen, preheat to 90 degrees Celsius, engage catalyst feed at 3 milliliters per minute. The words taste clinical on your tongue, devoid of the desert's reckless poetry. A technician in a lab green jumpsuit glides past, carrying a fuel drum-sized drum of methylamine, his respirator filtering every breath. He offers a curt nod. You return it. In 1983, OSHA established stricter respirator standards for industrial workers, a mainstream fact reminding you that protection sometimes arrives too late for those already harmed, and historians still argue whether regulation saves lives or stifles industry. You and Jesse navigate a narrow walkway above the mixers, footsteps synchronized. The catwalk vibrates underfoot, a constant reminder that your empire now rides on mechanical hum and calibrated valves. Below, an enormous mixer pulses, churning cobalt slurry that glows like measured starlight. You inhale a breath of filtered air and taste chemical ambition on your lips. Next, you reach the purification columns, tall towers of glass and steel where vapor condenses and separates into high-purity fractions. The columns hiss gently, a lullaby for industrial alchemy. You recall your first Pyrex dish cook and the thrill of seeing crystals precipitate. Here, precipitation happens at 1,000-liter scale. A fringe trader's rumor once claimed cartel labs imported mini distillation towers from online aquarium shops. Historians still debate whether DIY gear ever matched industrial systems, but here, you see the chasm. You and Jesse inspect a control terminal, its touchscreen listing feed rates, reflux ratios, and yield percentages. You key in 99.3% on the yield target, higher than half a dozen previous batches, but below Gus's benchmark of 99.9%. The screen blinks green. System ready. Your second joke skulks at the edge, beta testing America's finest, but you swallow it in deference to the machine's precision. A faint mechanical groan ripples through the cavern as a support beam hums, a minor structural tremor from the cavern's subterranean venting system. You steady yourself against a railing. Jesse grips your arm. "That okay?" he whispers. You nod. Standard vent cycling. A mainstream fact hums in your mind. In 1961, deep underground military bunkers used forced ventilation to maintain structural integrity. Historians still argue whether bunker tech protected or isolated, and here you wonder if this superlab secrecy will bury more than methane emissions. You descend a spiral staircase to the waste neutralization sector, where spent solvents drip into acid baths lined with heavy masonry. The pits bubble white foam as neutralizing agents tame corrosive waste. You watch the fizz and feel a pang. This is industry's dark underbelly, alchemy's cast-offs saved from toxic fate only by calculated disposal. You dip a test strip in the foam, pH neutral, to confirm safe discharge. At the far end, you find a secure locker labeled Emergency Shutdown. A glass flap conceals a pull handle. You press your palm to a scanner. The handle lifts with a pneumatic hiss. Safety protocol. You test the lever. It moves freely. In 1942, naval warships first installed emergency blow systems to prevent boiler explosions, a mainstream fact reminding you that fail-safes could mean life or death, and historians still debate whether such systems prevented catastrophe or bred complacency. Jesse whispers, "This place, it's a fortress." You grin, the truth both thrilling and terrifying. "Fortress and a cage," you reply, voice soft. The metaphor tastes metallic in your mouth. You finish the inspection at the loading bay, where stainless steel drums lined in neat rows await pickup. A forklift trundles by, sharply lit by overhead strobes. You glimpse a crate stamped 99.7 Batch 34, and taste both pride and disquiet. Every drum sealed is another piece of your soul boxed away. As you retrace your steps back to the RV, the cavern's exit looms, a small door the size of your car. Stepping through, you feel the cavern's hush yield to desert wind. The RV's battered exterior blinks in midday glare, a relic reborn. You and Jesse share a look, changed by scale, sharpened by precision. You probably won't survive this empire intact, but your hands are steady, and your resolve is alloyed stronger than any stainless steel below. Section 9, Gale's Calculated Formula. You slide back into your suburban home's silence as the RV recedes down the driveway. The familiar scrape of the front door latch a note of uneasy normalcy. You probably won't survive Skyler's next question without cracking, but she meets you in the foyer with arms folded and eyes sharp as desert thorns. The living room's soft glow frames her silhouette, coffee table littered with mismatched bills, the once innocent school fundraiser flyers now stained with inked annotations. In 1954, vinyl upholstery became popular to hide messes. Mainstream fact that underscores how home can mask chaos. But tonight, every crease in the couch and every stain on the table whispers secrets you can't scrub away. She stands by the window, sheer curtains quivering in the air conditioning breeze, and you taste the sharp tang of chamomile tea lingering on your tongue. Her attempt at calm. "Where have you been?" she asks, voice even but loaded. You feel the domestic script collapsing. Father, husband, substitute teacher, all eroding under the weight of hidden vats and cobalt crystals. A fringe sociologist once claimed that homes are emotional barometers, absorbing stress like a sponge. Historians still argue whether environment shapes behavior or vice versa, and here your home feels like both cradle and cage. You let your fingers trail over the stack of cash she's laid out. Tens, 20s, 50s, organized into wobbly piles. Skyler's eyebrow arches. Medical bills, mortgage, groceries, no space for lab profits. You muster your practiced calm. "Work," you say, voice smooth, lab reports, parent-teacher prep. Your first joke teeters on your lips. "I can't submit meth as extra credit," but you swallow it. Humor here is a blade that could sever your facade. Skyler leans in, incredulous. "Work?" she repeats, glancing at your collar. Flecks of cobalt still cling there. The accusation stings like a bee, the venom of doubt spreading. You recall that acid pit in Polvidera, the pyroclastic hiss that nearly burned your lungs, secrets running deeper than soil. A mainstream fact slides into your consciousness. 72% of marital breakdowns cite dishonesty. Historians still debate whether honesty builds trust or invites turmoil, and right now you're the one chipping away at the foundation. You clear your throat, stepping closer, catching the faint flicker of guilt in her eyes. I'm handling some freelance work, you offer, lab equipment maintenance. You conjure images of Bunsen burners and pipette calibration for authenticity. Skyler's gaze narrows. For whom? She demands. The question lands like a judge's gavel. You smooth the lapel of your jacket, masking your tremor. A contractor, industrial cleaning. You gesture vaguely toward the backyard. Of course, the RV would look messy after a big job. A fringe communication coach once claimed that confident body language can override truth. Historians still debate whether posture or content carries conviction. You lean against the doorframe, arms uncrossed, open stance, a silent plea for belief. She exhales, folding her arms tighter. Her lips press in a thin line, a dam holding back suspicion. I'll need details, she warns, voice softer but steel beneath. You nod, heart pounding like a reactor on low flame. You probably won't survive her follow-up interrogation without specifics, but you have files, fake invoices, burner numbers, you've prepped this script. Skyler retreats to the kitchen to fetch fresh tea, footsteps echoing like a metronome. You watch her silhouette through the curtain ripple. In that moment, you taste the lemon-scented steam rising from her mug, a sensory stinger that sharpens your lies. A mainstream fact emerges. Scent can trigger emotional recall. Historians still argue whether fragrances heal or haunt, and here, chamomile soothes and condemns you simultaneously. You pull a chair to the table and spread your folders, typed invoices on company letterhead, invoices for grease trap cleaning, dates and times meticulously aligned. You slide them toward her with the calm of a barrister presenting evidence. Jesse's text buzzes in your pocket, ready. A reminder that falsehoods are fragile. Skyler examines the papers by lamplight, brow furrowing. You hold your breath. The crinkle of paper is thunderous. Time slows. You feel the entire desert of your sins stretching behind you. Finally, she looks up. This better be real, she says, voice low. You exhale, temporary victory. She returns to the couch, tea in hand, and you slide beside her, careful to leave the faintest gap of daylight between you. You taste the upholstery's vinyl coolness, the tea's citrus warmth, and the adrenaline-tinged promise of more lies to weave. Historians still debate whether compartmentalization preserves sanity or corrodes the soul, and tonight you live that paradox on every inch of this couch. Section 10. Prison Cook Showdown. You slip into the mesquite thicket lining the remote highway, each step muffled by scrub and loose gravel, and feel a cold knot tighten in your gut. You probably won't survive this ambush without split-second reflexes. Moonlight filters through leafless branches, casting fractured shadows on the asphalt like warning signs. In 1990, long-range acoustic sensors were first deployed to detect insurgents in war zones, a mainstream fact reminding you that silent watchers can tip battles before they start, and historians still argue whether technology breeds security or paranoia. Jesse crouches beside you, hoodie drenched in sweat despite the desert chill, clutching the canvas bag of blue crystals as if it were a lifeline. His eyes dart across the road, searching for any sign of movement beyond the circle of your flashlight. You glance at him, palpable dread flickering in his features. Stay low, you whisper, voice barely more than a breeze, and you both flatten behind a fallen log, gloved hands pressed to the coarse bark. Ahead, two black Suburbans slide to a stop, tires kicking up grit that swirls in the beams of their headlights. Lionel and Marco Salamanca emerge, silhouettes framed by blinking amber lights as they step toward the roadside. The twins move with predatory grace, identical in build, each wearing dark leather jackets and gloves that glint in the glare. Their faces are impossible to read beneath the low brims of their baseball caps, but you know those caps hide lethal intent. You catch Marco's hand slip to a waistband bulge, a pistol, but Lionel's gloved fingers settle instead on a long-barreled shotgun slung casually over his shoulder. The hush in the desert expands, broken only by the distant hum of cicadas. A fringe folklorist claimed desert nights attract spiritual echoes. Historians still debate whether such tales are myth or memory, but tonight, every rustle feels like a ghost's whisper. Your breath catches when Lionel's gaze sweeps the embankment and locks on you. You barely duck behind the log in time. The desert silence fractures with the roar of his shotgun's breech. Birdshot rattles your boot, tiny dents in leather that sting like sweat in open wounds. Your first joke chokes in your throat. Guess it's bird season, but there's no room for laughter in this crossfire. A second blast chases you as Marco fires his pistol. Staccato cracks against the night. You plunge forward, hauling Jesse by the arm through mesquite spines and dust. Each shot echoes in your ears, thumping like a jagged heartbeat. You skitter across gravel, adrenaline flaring in your veins. A mainstream fact resurfaces. Modern body armor can stop birdshot at close range. Historians still argue whether armor saves lives or escalates violence, and you wish you'd thought to pack a vest. You reach the RV's side, heart pounding like a runaway reactor, and fling the door open. Inside, the makeshift lab glows under red lights, gauges flickering, switches poised. You grasp Jesse's arm and shove him past the control panel. "Start the burner," you hiss, fumbling with the hot plate switch. The flame roars to life, casting orange shadows as the RV becomes both fortress and frying pan. Outside, Lionel circles to the RV's rear, shotgun leveled at the hatch. Marco mirrors you at the front, revolver trained through the windshield. They fan out in textbook ambush formation, no room to escape. You slam the RV into gear, grinding tires against gravel. The engine's roar answers their shots with defiance. Each fraction of a second flickers with possibility. Drive through them, crash, or stand your ground. Jesse yanks the RV from park. You yank a fire axe from beneath the passenger seat and jam it into the door latch, hoping steel might buy time. The shotgun's barrel slams into the metal shell, one heavy thud, then slides off as Lionel's finger curls on the trigger. A bullet punches a hole in the door panel, small sparks scattering like molten stars. Jesse floors the accelerator, the RV bucks forward, bumper crunching over loose stones. You shift lanes on the washboard road, shoving the axe under the seat and yanking the wheel left. Marco's revolver fires through the windshield, glass fracturing in a spiderweb of gleaming teeth. You duck as a chunk of glass scores the dashboard. The desert air roars past in the shattered window frame. Your mind flickers to the acid vats in Section 2, no turnback moment, and you press on, tires carving arcs between dust clouds. The Suburbans peel out behind you, engines howling in pursuit. You punch the accelerator, the RV's engine screams in response. You risk a glance in the rearview mirror, twin headlights burning like hungry eyes. Jesse grabs the radio, static hissing. "They're right behind us," he shouts. You flick on hazard lights, two amber punctures in the night, hoping to blind or disorient. The twins accelerate, muzzle flashes flicking through the rolling darkness. You swerve suddenly, sending up rooster tails of gravel. The Suburbans skid, sliding wide. One fishtails, nearly flipping as it crosses the opposite lane. Your second joke skitters off the tongue. Road kills come a long way, but you swallow the laughter. You aim the RV for a narrow cut through jagged boulders, an untested path. The RV lurches and shudders, undercarriage scraping. You feel each jolt like a punch. Behind you, the Suburbans follow, but one tire slashes across a sharp rock, erupting in a hiss of rapid deflation. The vehicle veers off-road, momentum unchecked, and crashes into a washbank with a thunderous crack. Lionel stumbles out, cursing under his breath, jacket torn at the shoulder. Marco emerges from the first Suburban, rifle drawn, eyes scanning for your escape. You spot a narrow canyon entrance, the only route through. You lean on the horn, startling Texas sage and sending flocks of starlings skittering into moonlit sky. You drive the RV into the canyon, headlights slicing through jagged rock walls. Echoes chase you as the twins pursue on foot, shotgun blasts ricocheting off stone. You accelerate, hugging the curves tight, thunder in your chest. The path narrows until the RV's side mirrors scrape rock. Dust falls like rain. A low howl from Jesse as his hand slips on the canvas bag. He grips it tight. You risk a glance. The twins are farther back, disoriented by the canyon's labyrinthine twists. You flick the switch for the exhaust fan. Chemical fumes swirl, but the twins aren't close enough to sniff unless they follow. At the canyon's mouth, the RV bursts back onto the highway, engine roaring triumph and terror. You stare ahead, unblinking, until the road stretches empty beneath a sky spangled with stars. The moon dips behind the mountains. You exhale, a tremor-turned sigh, and pull onto a deserted side road. Jesse slumps forward, breath ragged. We lost them, he pants. You nod slowly, tasting dust and relief. For now, you say, voice steady. The suburban wreck smolders behind you, a monument to near misses and merciless intent. You drive on, horizon bleeding into dawn's first glow. You probably won't survive another close call like that. Neither ghost nor vengeance sleeps. But for tonight, you outran fate and emblems of rage. Section 11. Skyler's mounting suspicion. You slip into the living room as dusk's last ember fades, the gold of the lamp casting long shadows across the couch where Skyler sits, eyes distant and heart pounding like a Bunsen burner on full flame. You probably won't survive her next interrogation without razor focus, but this is the front line of your double life. In 1954, the first vinyl-upholstered couches flooded America's living rooms to mask stains. Mainstream fact that reminds you how surface comfort can hide deeper blots, and historians still argue whether design empowers or deceives. Skyler looks up, nostrils flaring as if she can smell the ammonia on your fingers, a sensory detail sharper than any lie you could weave. You let your coat sleeve brush the table, tiny flecks of cobalt dust catching in the lamp's glow. She notes the residue, and the question cracks the air. Who are you cooking for? Her voice is soft but edged like broken glass. You inhale her chamomile-scented calm, filtering panic through practiced detachment. Just some industrial cleaning contracts, you say, voice even. You glide to the end table and pick up the framed photo of Walt Jr., briefly meeting his hopeful smile. A fringe psychologist once claimed that family portraits can trigger oxytocin release. Historians still debate whether such imagery binds families or burdens, and tonight you cling to that illusion. Skyler rises, folding her arms. The tea in her hand trembles, and you taste its lemon undertone lingering on your tongue. I found another burner phone, she continues, sliding the device across the table. Your heart hammers. You probably won't survive this slip-up, but you keep your face smooth. You slide it back beneath papers, a napkin, school flyers, a stack of unremarkable bills. She intercepts your hand, gentle but firm. Every time my world gets bigger, yours gets smaller, she murmurs, eyes glistening. The words land like an acid splash. In 1963, slide projectors brightened classrooms, a mainstream fact that linked technology to trust in teachers. Historians still argue whether EdTech enlightened or distracted, and here you feel both truths. You let a joke flicker, then die. Maybe it's a mini planetarium upgrade, but you swallow the bitterness. Instead, you step closer, lowering your voice. Skyler, I'm doing this for us. The words taste hollow in your mouth. Catalyst without reaction. Skyler uncrosses her arms, searching your face for cracks. She inhales the room's hush. The hum of the fan, the tick of the clock, the distant rumble of the RV in the driveway. A mainstream fact floats through your mind. In 1980, quiet neighborhoods measured noise pollution to gauge quality of life. Historians still debate whether silence preserves peace or masks tension, and here, every silence screams. She shakes her head. "I want the truth," she says, voice unwavering. The spotlight shifts from her ceramic mug to your cobalt-speckled collar. A fringe archaeologist once noted that brushing aside small relics only deepens the layers of what you hide. Historians still argue whether excavation reveals or destroys, and right now, you stand on the precipice of both. You hold her gaze, feeling the sands of half-truths slipping away. You step back, lifting your hands palms up. "Give me time," you plead softly. A fleeting callback to the sealed evidence bags in Section 6 courses through you. Time can bury or reveal. She closes her eyes, as if weighing your plea against every doubt amassed like stones in her pocket. When she opens them, her expression is a ledger balanced on sympathy and suspicion. "Until I see something real," she whispers. You nod, swallowing the weight of that conditional forgiveness. Skyler retreats to the hallway, footsteps faint but resolute. You taste the vinyl's cold smoothness on your palm as you lean on the coffee table, heart echoing faster than any reactor gauge. You probably won't survive this domestic crucible unscathed, but for tonight, you've bought a sliver of truce. The lamp's glow softens at the edges as Skyler disappears down the corridor, leaving you alone with a faint scent of chamomile and the blare of unspoken truths. Section 12, Hank's PTSD and Obsession. You wake to the RV's diesel hum sliding through the pre-dawn chill, pale light filtering in like a cautionary whisper, and feel every muscle still taut from last night's ambush. You probably won't survive this day unmoved, but duty beckons. Mike's contacts await. In 1913, the first large-scale electrical grid failures spurred invention of backup systems, a mainstream fact reminding you that power reliability can mean life or death, and historians still argue whether redundancy breeds safety or complacency. Jesse sits at the pull-out table, eyes hollow as he pushes cold coffee around a dented mug. A stray crystal shard glints on the tabletop, a souvenir from your canyon escape. You scoop it up, sliding it back into the canvas bag with gloved care. His gaze flicks to the bag, then to you, and you sense his fragile trust teeter once more. Outside, the desert sun rises in muted oranges, painting the RV's dented side in desert ochre hues. You step out, breath frosting in the cool air, and cross to the flatbed tow truck Mike requested. The driver, a grizzled former military guy, hands you a sealed box of evidence. Charger fragments, cactus spines, primer residue, all cataloged and ready for courier pickup. You transfer it to your duffel, the weight of each bag clicking in your knuckles. Back inside, Mike's ciphered list waits on the dash. 3 aliases, 2 burner lines, 1 dead drop coordinate. You dial the first number, holding the phone to your ear, tasting adrenaline in each ring. A silent click, then a voice. "You have it." You reply, secured, and receive instructions to rendezvous at a deserted gas station 20 miles east. You hang up, heart stuttering like a mis-wired circuit. Jesse fumbles the radio headset. "We doin' this now?" he rasps. You nod, setting the RV in gear. The engine's growl answers like a pact. As you roll down the highway, the sun's glare flashes off the crystal dust on your dashboard, meth blue flecks shimmering like distant stars in your rearview mirror. Skyler's voice drifts through your phone via text. "Dinner reservations tonight?" You delay the reply. Domestic normalcy feels like a ticking trap. A fringe sociologist once argued that postponed communication heightens emotional distance. Historians still debate whether absence fosters intimacy or estrangement, and tonight you drift further from both. You veer onto the dirt access road leading to the gas station. The RV lurches, suspension groaning under the duffel's weight. Jesse's knuckles whiten on the seatbelt. "You good?" he asks, voice wavering. You force a smile. "Just focus." Your second joke tries to break through. "At least the buffet here is low carb," but you swallow it as you pull into the cracked forecourt. The station's half-lit canopy hovers over silent pumps. You park in the far corner, engine idling. Mike's black SUV slides in behind, tinted windows swallowing any hint of recognition. You step out, duffel in hand, and approach the passenger side. Mike's door swings open. His face is calm slate. He takes the bag, nods once, then tosses you a small, unmarked envelope, fees for service rendered. The paper crackles as you catch it. Inside the envelope, crisp bills fan like silent praise. You pocket them, feeling both relief and revulsion. Payment for burying evidence, for erasing death. In 1971, the first U.S. witness protection funds were issued in unmarked envelopes, a mainstream fact that blurs state-sanctioned secrecy with criminal concealment. Historians still argue where protection ends and power corrupts. Mike slides back into his SUV and disappears into the morning haze. You watch his tail lights fade, leaving you and Jesse alone in the still-lit gas station. The RV's headlights cut through rising dust as you climb back in. Jesse stares at the envelope in your hand. "That it?" he whispers. You nod, sensing the gulf between payment and peace. You probably won't survive this empire without a soul, but you tighten your grip on the envelope. Hope or bribe, it's the same weight. You merge back onto the highway, the desert stretching endless under a waking sky. Dawn's promise mocks your guilt, shining light on each moral fracture. You taste gasoline and regret in every breath. Section 13, The Cousin's Ambush. You step into the uncomfortably bright interrogation room at the DEA substation, its fluorescent glare casting long, harsh shadows on the scuffed linoleum, reminding you that scrutiny never sleeps, even when you wish it would. Hank Schrader sits across from a confidential informant, fingers drumming on the metal table as if time itself can be knocked into confession. You probably won't survive this proximity to Hank's PTSD-fueled obsession without flinching, but you steel yourself. Hank's focus could tear the RV lab apart if he sniffs a hint. In 1983, post-Vietnam studies first linked combat exposure to long-term psychological trauma, a mainstream fact that gave names to nightmares, and historians still argue whether therapy or time alone heals war's wounds. But here, Hank's nightmares bleed into daytime interrogations. Hank's gaze, once jovial and boisterous, now flickers with a brittle intensity. His uniform, olive green and spotless, hangs on him like ceremonial armor, radios and cuffs gleaming on his belt. You taste the stale coffee on his breath as he leans forward, voice low. "He was here last night, near the old gas line." His words echo like hammer strikes on a steel drum, each syllable demanding payoff. The informant, a jittery kid in a stained t-shirt, shrinks under Hank's scrutiny. He fiddles with a pack of cigarettes, lighting one despite the room's no-smoking rule. Hank's head snaps up, nostrils flaring. "You know I can smell it on you," he growls, voice edged with raw memory. "Same stink as my cousin's." A fringe psychologist once claimed olfactory memory ties sent to trauma stronger than sight. Historians still argue whether smell precedes fear or the other way around, but here, Hank's world is coded in chemical signatures. You watch from the doorway, balancing caution and concern. Hank's obsession with the Salamanca cousins and that twisted cartel hit left him gasping in ambulance floors, and now his PTSD drives him into every dark corner. He clocks the kids shaking hands, voice cracking. "You think I forget what they did to me? The blood." The kid stutters, sweat dripping from his brow. You slip forward and clear your throat. Hank swivels, eyes flashing. You raise your palms. Hank, I got something, you say, voice calm. You lay out a folded map that traces the remote cook sites, salt-crusted roads, and dawn rendezvous points. His gaze flickers from the map to your face, hungry like a wolf sniffing for weakness. A mainstream fact surfaces. Cartographers first employed heat maps to plan firebreaks in the 1950s. Historians still debate whether visual data frees or confines decision-makers, and here you offer Hank data to contain chaos. He snatches the map, scanning routes where the RV's silhouette danced under moonlight. His breath hitches. Recognition. He slams the map on the table. Where did you get this? He demands, eyes blazing with feral focus. You hold his gaze, a fragile truce between brother-in-law and covert chemist. Let's just say I have sources, you reply. Hank's chest heaves as he processes. We're moving on this. He snaps his fingers at the informant, motioning him to follow. The kid drops the cigarette and scrambles out, leaving the door clack shut. The room hums with sudden emptiness. Hank turns back to you, holster jangling. I need a warrant, he says, voice rumbling with need. Search this RV. You channel calm. This moment could shatter everything. You'll get one, you assure him softly. But give me 20 minutes to clear sensitive stuff. His stare is a storm, thunderheads behind his eyes. You navigate the storm with practiced words. Family first, you whisper. He breathes in, nods once, an electric truce. You exhale, tension leaking from your shoulders. A fringe anthropologist once suggested that shared trauma forges trust. Historians still argue whether trauma bonds or fractures relationships, and here, you breathe relief that Hank's war shadows include you. He reaches a hand across the table, placing it near yours, an unspoken acknowledgement of alliance. We're in this together, he rumbles. The words are both balm and blade, protection wrapped in threat. You stand, tension easing just enough to taste fear's afterburn. I'll meet you at 0800, you say, with everything. Hank folds the map, tucks it into his jacket. I'll be there, he confirms, authority tempered by fatigue. As you exit the interrogation room, the hallway's fluorescent hum feels softer, less accusing. You glance back. Hank's silhouette stands framed by the doorway, warrior turned detective, poised at the edge of redemption and ruin. You probably won't survive his next move without compromise, but you step into the corridor, armed with maps, lies, and the fragile bond of shared purpose. Section 14, Walt's Final Descent. You ease the RV onto a half-forgotten frontage road, the morning highway glare behind you and a horizon of wind-twisted mesquite ahead, and feel every hesitation crawl up your spine. You probably won't survive this final cook without your final reserves of cunning. In 1970, clandestine chemists began fleeing fixed labs for mobile rigs, a mainstream fact that underlines nomadic secrecy's rise. Historians still argue whether mobility outpaced law enforcement or simply displaced it, and tonight your RV is both fortress and fugitive. Inside, Walt kneels at the swivel burner, gloved hands moving with precision that belies last night's domestic cracks. He measures pseudoephedrine with digital finesse, 1.000 grams exactly, while you prime the second burner's gauge. The air tastes of butane and desert grit, a sensory blend that hums in your veins. Jesse hovers, restless, eyes bright with adrenaline and dread. 50 grand ride on this batch, you murmur, voice low but steady. Behind you, the ragged tarp awning casts a pool of shade over the pop-up lab, its edges flapping like bat wings. A fringe desert survivalist once claimed tarps were the camper's first tent. Historians still debate whether such makeshift shelters saved more lives or bred risk, and here, your shelter teeters between refuge and tomb. Walt pours heptane into the primary flask, the liquid's hiss slicing through the morning hush. You arm the exhaust fan, its PVC elbow rattling as it primes. In 1961, Mercury astronauts relied on forced air systems to survive re-entry. Historians still argue whether space-age tech belongs in fringe labs, but today, your fan is lifeline. Your first joke nearly slips out. Houston, we have a catalyst, but you swallow it. This mission isn't laughing matter. The solution warms under twin flames. Walt's brow furrows as he stirs. The color shifts from pale straw to mustard, the first sign of complex reaction. You adjust the coolant flow, preventing runaway heat. A mainstream fact flickers. Early dye factories capped reaction temperatures to avoid carcinogenic byproducts. Historians still debate whether regulation or innovation guided safety, and tonight, safety margins are your only shield. Jesse watches the reflux condenser drip clear solvent back into the mix. His auburn hoodie flickers in the flame's glow, each crease a memory of his brought-up past. You sense his tension. This batch is both business and blood oath. Keep that up, Pinkman, Walt intones, voice clipped. We hit 99.6%. Jesse's nod is tight. You measure a catalyst slurry, palladium on carbon, into a syringe and inject it just above the vapor line. The mixture bubbles, a chemical heartbeat pulsing through the flask. In 1867, the first industrial catalysts revolutionized fertilizer production. Historians still argue whether catalysts fed the hungry or poisoned the earth, and here your catalyst is both blessing and curse. Your second joke manages release. If this goes off, at least you'll leave a legacy, but no one smiles. Instead, you and Walt exchange a glance, brother chemists welded by risk. The vapor hood whirs louder, pulling fumes through charcoal filters. You taste solvent's acrid bite on your tongue, a reminder that every breath here carries cost. Time stiffens as you slide the flask into the cooling bath. Steam hisses like a serpent exhaling. Jesse grips the table edge, knuckles white. You set a timer on your phone, 10 minutes exactly to crystallize. A fringe crystallographer once theorized that ambient vibrations shape crystal lattices. Historians still debate whether vibration is boon or bane, and you wonder if desert wind sings the right song. While you wait, you assemble heat-sealed pouches, each stamped, Final, Tuco. Their empty silence echoes promises of profit and peril. You place them on the magnetic reagent board, pseudoephedrine, methylamine, toluene, catalyst, all lined like sacrificial tokens. Each jar glints in petrol green and meth blue labels. Your third joke surfaces with grave resonance. These are the keys to modern alchemy, but the words hang hollow. In medieval lore, alchemists sought gold. Tonight, you seek currency that buys freedom. A mainstream fact, gold's monetary reign crumbled when Nixon severed the dollar's gold peg in 1971. Historians still argue whether that freed economies or unleashed fiscal chaos. Here you chase another metal, crystal blue, peddled to fund an empire of lies. The timer buzzes. You remove the flask, its contents now curtain blue crystals clinging to the glass. You scoop them onto a chilled watch glass, each shard glinting like they've trapped a piece of dawn. Jesse's breath catches. Walt's eyes soften then harden. Measure purity, Walt says. You calibrate the spectrometer, its screen flickers, 99.7%. A triumph edged in tension. Jesse pumps his fist, but Walt's nod is slow, cautious. You bag the crystals, 250 grams per pouch, precisely weighed. Each bag's weight taped into W2 pressure-sealed envelope. Steel presses into your gut, the duffel awaits. $50,000 in crisp notes, balanced against 4 kilos of cobalt. You slot the pouches into the bag's interior pockets. It expands like a living thing, heavy with promise. The RV's heat shimmers as you pack away glassware, wiping flasks with coffee filters, stowing tubing in labeled bins. The makeshift lab morphs back into transportable refuge. You test the fan, kill the burners. Silence settles like dust. You slide the tarp closed against midday glare. The desert exhales, stirring sage and regret. Let's deliver, you say, voice flat. Jesse locks the hatch, determination coiled in his stance. You start the engine, its purr a fragile victory. Dawn spills over the mesas, painting the RV's side in rose gold. You probably won't survive this empire unscathed, but you've honored one more contract. Final cook, final gamble. Section 15, Cliffhanger Showdown Foreshadowed. You trudge into the makeshift meeting room at the industrial laundry hideout, the stale scent of detergent mingling with solvent fumes, and feel every anticipation coil in your chest like a spring wound too tight. You probably won't survive this final reckoning without nerves of steel, but tonight's convening will seal the season's fate. In 1918, armistice celebrations rang across Europe at the end of World War I, a mainstream fact reminding you that peace can follow apocalypse, and historians still argue whether treaties heal wounds or sow fresh resentments, and here you stand on both sides of a fragile armistice. The Superlab's entrance yawns before you, its heavy steel door swung open on thick hinges that groan like reluctant sentries. Inside, the fluorescent glare illuminates 5 competitors in this clandestine chess game. Gus Fring, calm as carved marble. Mike Ehrmantraut, his posture rigid as a guard tower. Jesse Pinkman, shifting uneasily at your side. And 2 enigmatic figures in tailored suits, unknown buyers from an Eastern cartel, their eyes veiled behind dark frames. You sweep the tableau with a measured breath, tasting the tang of anticipation and betrayal on your tongue. Gus stands at the head of a long stainless steel table, the crystal samples from your final cook fanned before him like a chemical offering. Behind him, the conveyor belts and vats pulse in quiet readiness, a mechanized choir awaiting divine command. You recall the first time you glimpsed this chamber in Section 8, and you feel both reverence and dread at its silent promise. A fringe engineer once mused that industrial acoustics shape perception of scale. Historians still debate whether sound amplifies power or underscores fragility, and here, the lab sings its own cautionary hymn. Gus's voice slices the hum. Gentlemen, he begins, inflection cool, the product you see here is unmatched. He clarifies purity percentages, yield volumes, and payment terms with crystalline precision. The buyers exchange glances, their translator murmurs in clipped tones. Mike watches impassively, arms crossed. Jesse's hands tremble at your side, clutching the canvas bag's strap like a lifeline. You step forward, mind ticking through contingencies like colored beads on an abacus. This is your moment. Finalize deals, shift loyalties, and emerge the architect of an empire. Yet each alliance here is a fault line. One wrong handshake could ignite a collapse. A mainstream fact drifts through your mind. In medieval trade fairs, one dishonest scale could topple reputations. Historians still argue whether market trust preceded regulation or vice versa. Tonight, trust is the most volatile reagent. The lead buyer slides a slim envelope across the table, crisp bills checking like an overture of crumpled applause. He peers at you through mirrored lenses. You lift the envelope, count with gloved fingers. 50,000 up front, 50,000 upon delivery, a ledger balanced by faith and fear. You meet his gaze, offering a nod of assurance. Your first joke flickers, just wait till you taste the garnish, but you mute it, knowing wit can quicken betrayals. Gus appraises the exchange with a single flicker of an eyebrow, the only breach in his composure. He gestures to Mike, who retrieves 2 identical briefcases, one filled with crystal pouches, the other with stacked cash. A fringe barter historian once posited that physical tokens cement trust more than contracts. Historians still debate whether material symbols or signed parchment hold greater weight, and here, briefcases are your covenants. Mike sets both cases on the table, latches clicking in unison. The twin sounds echo like gavel strikes. You slide the crystal case toward the buyers and push the cash case to Gus's side. Time stretches. Jesse inhales sharply. This transaction is his lifeline and his indictment. Suddenly, the hidden RV motion sensor camera pivots, its LED blinking green, catching Gus in its peripheral gaze. The buyer's translator pauses, eyes narrowing. "Your friend here," he says, nodding at Jesse, "is also part of this?" Gus's lips tighten. Your heart hammers. Was that camera meant to record or betray? A mainstream fact. In 2005, digital surveillance outpaced privacy laws, and historians still argue whether watchful eyes protect or prey on citizens. Tonight, surveillance feels like a loaded gun pointed at alliances. Gus's voice remains smooth. He is essential to quality control. He slides a crystal shard to Jesse, whose fingers close around it like a ransom note. The buyers lean forward, intensity flaring. "Then we expect his presence at every quarterly review," the translator intones. The declaration cements Jesse's fate, partner and guarantor in equal measure. You sense a shift in the air, subtle recalibration of power. Mike's hand falls to his holster, not threatening, merely poised. The buyers study the lab's perimeter, acknowledge its industrial might, then nod in solemn accord. Papers are slid across the table, agreements written in jargon and thin ink, binding you all in delicate pacts. You sign with a practiced flourish, noting each clause with a chemist's eye for detail. As the last signature dries, Gus rises, dismissing the buyers with a curt inclination. Their silhouettes recede down the conveyor-lined corridor, boots echoing like closing curtains. You exhale, tasting relief and unease. The commanders of this season have all affirmed their stakes. Now you occupy a precarious summit. Gus approaches, his cologne-scented calm filling your senses. He fixes you with that glacier gaze. "Heisenberg," he says quietly, using the name you chose, "welcome to the next chapter." The words feel like both blessing and indictment. You nod, shoulders squared. "Thank you," you reply, voice steady. Jesse exhales, shoulders slumping in exhaustion and elation. Mike offers you a succinct nod, unspoken respect exchanged in silence deeper than any vow. The lab's vats pulse behind you, poised to churn out fortunes or destruction. You step back to the doorway, the desert's dawn light seeping in like a question mark. Outside, the RV waits, battered but reborn. You probably won't survive the empire you've built without paying in kind, but tonight, you stand at the apex of power and peril. Wind down. The night's adrenaline recedes as dawn's first soft light stretches across the desert like a tentative promise. You sit on the RV's sagging bench, the world outside quiet as a held breath. Each inhale tastes of creosote warmth, cooled by distant sage whispers. Slowly, the lab's hum fades to a gentle pulse, a lullaby of machinery ebbing to rest. In 1950, bedtime radio programs lulled families into slumber with soft-spoken stories and gentle tunes, a mainstream comfort that historians still debate as cultural glue or distraction. Tonight, you find solace in this shared ritual of calm. Your shoulders loosen, your mind untangles from the tapestry of deals, betrayals, and chemical crusades. You recall Walt's remission news, hope's flicker against cancer's eclipse, and Jesse's tremulous handshake with death on the rooftop. Each memory washes over you with the tide of responsibility and regret. A fringe poet once likened memory to desert sands, shifting, elusive, but shaped by every passing wind. Historians still argue whether nostalgia heals or ensnares, and here, memory is both anchor and echo. You close your eyes, feeling the RV's seat absorb your weight like a faithful confidant. The world narrows to heartbeat and breath, pulse and hum. You taste coffee's faint bitterness and chamomile's forgiving sweetness on your tongue. The desert world outside stretches vast and indifferent, a canvas of possibility and peril. You remind yourself that morning's embrace need not demand immediate action. Even warriors deserve respite before the next dawn's call. As the fan's lull whispers over you, your thoughts slow. Dust motes dance in the pale light, settling on dashboards and empty beakers like silver dust. Each mote glints, a tiny testament to journeys, miles, and choices made under harsh suns. Time softens, the lab's edges blur, melding with horizon's promise. Tomorrow, new challenges rise with the sun. But tonight, you grant yourself this peace. Small, fragile, deeply earned. Now, surrender to slumber's gentle current, trusting that dawn's reckoning can wait. Sweet dreams.